No one knows his name, only the sound of iron, dragging through silence. Decades ago, he lost his hand in a factory accident. But what came back wasn't human. They say it's just a story. But even now, children still lock their windows every night.
The fog clung to the ground like a shroud, wrapping the desolate stretch of Lover's Lane in an impenetrable haze. Nestled on the outskirts of Sandusky, Ohio, this narrow, tree-lined road was a forgotten relic, its pavement cracked and overtaken by creeping vines. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay, and the only sound was the faint rustle of leaves as a cold wind whispered through the skeletal branches overhead. On nights like this, the streetlights flickered weakly, casting jagged shadows that seemed to move on their own. Locals avoided this place after dark, whispering that Lover's Lane wasn't just a road, it was a gateway to something sinister. They said if you parked your car here, at midnight you'd hear it. The slow, deliberate scrape of a metal hook against the asphalt, growing louder with every heartbeat. The legend of the Hookman had haunted Sandusky for decades, its origins traced back to the 1950s. They spoke of a man named William Carver, a factory worker who lost his hand in a gruesome machinery accident. Doctors replaced his missing hand with a crude metal hook, but the injury broke more than his body. It shattered his mind. William became obsessed with the teenagers who frequented Lover's Lane, their laughter and carefree joy a cruel reminder of the life he'd lost. One stormy night, he followed a young couple to the lane, his hook glinting in the lightning. The next morning, the couple was found dead in their car, their faces frozen in terror, deep scratches carved into the doors. William vanished, but the killings didn't stop. Over the years, more couples disappeared, their abandoned cars found with the same chilling mark, a single, deep scratch from a hook. Locals swore William's vengeful spirit still roamed Lover's Lane, hunting anyone foolish enough to trespass on his domain. In the late 1970s, a group of teenagers decided to defy the warnings and parked their van on Lover's Lane for a late-night dare. They were laughing, the radio blasting a rock song when the music suddenly cut out. A crackling voice broke through the static, a local DJ with a grave tone. "If you're on Lover's Lane right now, leave. The Hookman has been spotted." The teens froze, thinking it was a prank, until they heard a faint, scraping sound outside. One of them, a boy named Tommy, peeked through the window and saw nothing but fog. Just as he turned back, a deafening screech tore through the night as something sharp dragged across the van's roof. They sped off in a panic, but when they checked the van later, they found a deep gash on the roof and a single, rusted hook dangling from the rear bumper. What had the Hookman been planning before they escaped? A decade later, in 1989, a girl named Emily told her friends a story that still haunts Sandusky's older residents. She and her boyfriend had been on Lover's Lane, parked under a massive oak tree, when they heard a strange tapping on the car window. Thinking it was the wind, they ignored it, until the tapping turned into a slow, deliberate scrape. Her boyfriend started the car, but as they pulled away, Emily realized her necklace was missing. The next day, she returned in broad daylight to look for it, her heart pounding as she approached the oak tree. There, hanging from a low branch, was her necklace, wrapped around a bloodied hook that glinted in the sunlight. A faint whisper seemed to echo from the tree. "You left something behind?" Had the Hookman claimed her necklace as a trophy, or was he marking her as his next target? I'd heard the stories growing up, but I never believed them until last summer. My friend Sarah and I decided to test the legend ourselves. We parked her old Chevy at the far end of Lover's Lane just before midnight, the windows fogged with our nervous breath. "It's just a story," Sarah laughed, but her voice trembled. Then we heard it, a faint rhythmic scraping like metal dragging across the road. My heart sank as the sound grew closer, deliberate and slow. Sarah grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "It's nothing," I whispered, but my voice cracked. Suddenly, the car jolted as something heavy slammed against the door. A long, screeching scratch tore through the silence, the sound of metal on metal. I turned on the headlights, and there it was. A shadowy figure standing just beyond the light, a glinting hook dangling from its right arm. Sarah screamed, and I floored the gas pedal. As we sped away, I looked in the rearview mirror. Those cold, empty eyes were staring right at me. That night changed us. Sarah couldn't sleep for weeks, jumping at every sound, convinced the Hookman had followed us home. I wasn't much better. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that hook, heard that awful scraping. We'd laughed at the legend, thinking we were braver than the stories, but now we understood the terror that had gripped Sandusky for generations. The Hookman wasn't just a tale to scare teenagers. He was a reminder of the darkness that lingers in forgotten places, waiting for the curious to stumble into its grasp. The townsfolk we told our story to nodded, grimly, their faces pale. "You're lucky to be alive," an old man at the diner muttered, his hands trembling as he clutched his coffee. "He doesn't let most people leave." The fear wasn't just in the encounter, it was in the questions that haunted us after. What if he's still out there? What if he knows where we live? The Hookman of Lover's Lane is more than a legend. He's a shadow that clings to the edges of reality, making you question what's truly out there in the dark. Sandusky's Lover's Lane still stands, silent and waiting, daring the next curious soul to test its secrets. Do you believe in the Hookman, or is he just a figment of our fears? I've shared my story, now it's your turn. Have you ever encountered a chilling urban legend like the Hookman? Drop your experiences in the comments below and let's unravel the darkness together. Subscribe to Shadows of the States for more Unveiled Shadows episodes, where we dive into the creepiest corners of American folklore. Dare to explore the unknown with us, because some legends are closer to reality than you think.